very much. Come on in, everybody. The water is warm. People are friendly, I think. And so, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is well caffeinated because we will challenge your ability to stay awake momentarily. My name is Tim Hanlon. I do run a strategic a strategic investment and advisory firm called the Vertere Group. I am a weary veteran of the agency world, both from the Publicis family and Interpublic families, and have lived to tell about it. And I think we'll hear some of the issues that I have experienced forging and pursuing innovation, especially in the area of video / television / whatever it's becoming. And these panelists here have very solid and realistic points of view that I think will hopefully surface kind of the issues. I honestly don't think we're going to solve any problems here today, right? We have 41 minutes or so, 42 minutes or so to tackle all the world's problems. We're going to try. But please feel free to have some questions ready, especially for the last 10, 15 minutes, because these are key folks on the buying and the selling side that I think you will get real important opinions from. So I'm going to start with Scott Schiller on the end and let everybody introduce themselves. Just, again, who you are and the place that you not only work now, but sort of where you sort of fit in the quote-unquote video ecosystem.
I'm Scott Schiller. I am Executive Vice President of Digital Ad Sales for NBC Universal. As many of you know, we have lots of digital properties, and I run a portfolio that focuses on our original web businesses such as Fandango, iVillage, and Daily Candy, as well as some of our very content-rich web businesses like eOnline and Style. Tim and I know each other from the beginning. I think that what's interesting about the time period we're in right now is it likens back to the early days of cable television, when the issue with cable was you got to be in 50 million homes, you got to be in 70 million homes, you're too small, your reach isn't big enough, and many of the issues are the same, and I think we'll be exploring marketers' needs and how we deal with those dilemmas on this panel.
Thank you. Gary.
Hi, I'm Gary Reisman. I'm not a buyer or a seller. I own a company called New Media Metrics. We use quantitative metrics of measures of emotional attachment to help marketers understand which media properties are saturated with their highest value customers, and therefore which media properties they should align with to maximize their return on investment.
Good morning, Steve Grimes. I run digital media for Comedy Central, so I guess technically a buyer, but more of a creator than a buyer. Also known Tim and Scott for a long time, way back sort of 15, 20 years ago at the dawn of this business in Seattle. I used to work at video sort of pioneer company Real Networks, if anybody remembers Real, and was dealing with sort of what video advertising meant when it was a 14.4 modem. So kind of a different world we're living in now, so excited to talk more about it.
Hi everyone, Andy Chapman. I head up digital investment for Mindshare in North America. What that essentially means is leading our strategy and approach in the marketplace for all digital investment. Obviously video is a growing part of that, and increasingly my role involves coordinating with our team members internally, especially our broadcast group, and figuring out a common approach to the marketplace to further our general approach for our advertisers.
Good morning, I'm Talia Arnold. I'm the Director of Digital Strategy for Horizon Media, which is the largest independent media servicing company. We have really a media-neutral, holistic approach to our clients' business and brand marketing. So really on this panel, I have a digital background, but I'm technically Switzerland, and I'm going to represent both the television and digital buyer's point of view.
So thank you all. I'm just going to rip something from the headlines. Alexander Burrell at Ad Age had a very interesting story. It's very inside pool, but I think it's extremely relevant for this conversation. And the headline, I'm not going to read you the article, but the headline is, as video goes mainstream, TV and digital agency execs fight over who controls it or who owns it. And I guess the question as a toss-up is, who owns video? Is it the TV people? Because it is television in the idea of television in new environments. Or is it digital because it's coming through screens and laptops and devices? First one to buzz in gets 50 points.
I'll buzz.
Talia.
So this is definitely an issue that I think agencies are struggling with. In my current agency and previous agencies, it's something we've always discussed. I think the point of view that I've come to is that first, that these two media are, though they are using both video and perhaps it's the same video creative, these two media are incredibly different in the consumer's usage, the experience, how they're sold, how they're consumed. The behaviors are so incredibly different that I think it's challenging to expect that one group would be able to take on the responsibility of, so television owning video or digital buyers buying television.
But the reality when you're buying, though, is quite different, right? It's still fairly siloed, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, I think what Talia said is definitely true. I would say that there's no doubt that there are different skill sets required in order to merge these two platforms. I think we increasingly think about video as, video is video, regardless of where it exists, whichever screen it lives on. That's the consumer viewpoint. So I think what we have to do is to make sure that from an agency perspective, we're equipped to deliver it and measure it as such. And so it's been a long journey, and it's still, we're probably not halfway there. But I think what we're trying to do internally is to kind of align ourselves with our skill sets from a digital perspective, which is sort of the technology aspect of it, the measurement aspect of it, coupled with the broadcast skill set, which is very much, negotiation forward, understanding environments and content, and making sure that we're aligning that as best we can, because frequently and typically when we're talking about TV extensions, this is really an area where we're trying to make sure that we're being consistent with content and environments and translating that over into the digital area in a way that makes sense.
So it's easy, right? Okay, go ahead.
I would agree that it is. The agencies need to reformulate themselves to talk to video as agnostic to the platform at some point. We as an industry way too often think about things in platforms. And even to today, it's the upfront, and you'll still hear people talking about cable versus broadcast, and the reality is it's TV. It's a one TV world, and it is a one video world. And the sooner that I recognize the fact that there are different skill sets, and there always will be different skill sets, and people will bring different things to the party, but the sooner that the agencies come together to recognize that the marketer wants video and needs to figure out how to leverage that, I think the better everyone will be.
So Steve and Scott, why is it not easier to sell then if you're starting to at least hear the seeds of that understanding?
Well, let's take
Go
a
ahead,
step.
Scott.
Let's go back up. Let's go back up to.
Steve will get to you, we promise.
Yeah, I'll join in.
Well, you said Steve and Scott. You take a step back up to 30,000 feet, and you look at it from a client's eyes. And there's a video market, and clearly the evolution of digital is another platform to bring video to a media buying experience and media communication experience is important. But that's only looking at it strictly from the point of view, from the lens that content is king. We take the approach that it's not just content that's king, but that context is critical. And so the idea here is that from our perspective, television and digital together and video on both platforms can work together to lead to greater engagement. So from our job, from our perspective, we will find whoever is buying video and make the proposition that we can reach the consumer through a better means of engagement by combining the different platforms. To Talia's point, the different platforms the video is served through.
I mean, I would say putting on sort of the programming hat for a second and maybe an alternate 30,000-foot level. I mean, as a company, Comedy Central is making a concerted effort to move away from being a TV company. And in fact, I've been there now 2 years. My objective is to do myself out of a job. There should be no reason to have a guy in charge of digital media at this company. Everything we do on Comedy Central is targeted to the sort of 18 to 34-year-old male. That is the group that's watching The Daily Show on any number of devices, one of which happens to be the TV. And so for us, whether you watch, as I was just talking to somebody at the break, they watch Colbert Report every morning on their laptop. I don't care whether you watch it there or if you watch it at 11:30. What we do care at the moment is that the money hasn't caught up with that. We obviously are still in a business where the TV rating is the thing that's driving the revenue. That's what we're sort of struggling to rationalize, is we've got an audience that's rushing in one direction. We've got an industry that's reluctantly not yet quite ready to accept that and isn't valuing those two things the same.
All right, and Gary, get ready, because I'm going to set this up for you as a softball. So
I like that.
there's a reason why, then, it seems, that money isn't, quote-unquote, coming into online/digital video as much as consumer consumption of such shows. Right? This sounds like a story we've heard a decade or two ago as digital became kind of real and mainstream, and it was disproportionately undernourished based on versus usage and trends, and only now is that starting to catch up. But my thought here is that metrics, number one, and number two, currency. So can you speak to that reality? Because it sounds to me like if you figure out both of those, the money starts to flow.
Right. I mean, that is a softball. Thank you. But
Take a swing.
The reality is we do need to look at metrics and currency. They're the same thing, right? So you have a currency, and then the question is, how valuable is that currency to a particular brand buyer? Somebody who's, at the end of the day, we need to always remember that we're all in business to help marketers sell product, or to increase the value of their brands. So we need to be very, very diligent in not only not being driven to just want to count impressions and currency. I've got 500 million impressions. I've been hearing it all morning. We got 200. We got 2 million. We got all these different currencies. But the reality is that needs to be combined with, are the brand buyers, to your point, contextually involved, engaged, and is the media, is that particular piece of content saturated with the right type of people who have the likelihood of buying the product. So we need to have a suite, actually, of different types of numeric metrics that allow us to understand not only how many people you reach, but the value of each of those people that you're reaching for a particular audience or for a particular product, and that's where we need to actually get to.
But when you're selling this stuff or putting together the sales proposition, it's not as easily digestible as that, right? Because a lot of people either are looking at it as a Nielsen hamburger helper kind of thing, or a series of digital metrics that don't quite tell the full story, like a pre-roll load.
So at any level,
And those sound to me incongruent.
I hear you, but I think at any level, size is not the arbiter for building reach, because I think ultimately environment and audience matter. And so it's our job to show the value of the connection that's made by the video or the digital content by creating the right context for this. So I think it's a marketplace issue, right? It's too small, it's too expensive, it's too difficult. And it's our job to thread the needle to be able to show that we can make that right connection for the consumer, ultimately for the marketer.
Yeah, but is that to a digital mindset or to a TV mindset?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we struggle with. I think this whole industry is struggling with is the sort of dichotomy of does it make sense in digital channels where you have significant measurability, targetability, to be, approaching the world, using the old model of television and fairly basic demographics, right? And I've been struggling with this for a number of years. And I think where I've sort of arrived at is that because TV budgets are still 99% of probably video out there, and they're the driver of where this is kind of going in the short term at least, that there is value in at least figuring out how to solve that problem in the short term using demographics to at least get somewhere towards a right size kind of budget or distribution of your video budget online versus offline. There is risk in that, I think, long term, in that we get stuck in that sort of old model and lose the opportunity and the efficacy you get using the digital approaches and the technology and the data that you get, the targeting that you get. And so that's something that I think we're always trying to keep our eyes on, especially the digital folks within agencies, or how to reconcile both of those things.
Well, I mean, I just, the content that people actually pull to them and seek out and view because it's contextually relevant to them is the most valuable content in the marketplace. And I think that that's sort of getting lost in the size of it all. I mean, to your point, if we do a lot of research in the marketplace, and we develop a cross-platform study. And if you look at, it's kind of interesting, if you look at a 55 to 65-year-old and you look at what content they pull to them across broadcast, cable, and even internet, you'll see all the networks that we know. If you look at a 13 to 17 or an 18 to 24-year-old, you will see that one of the most valued media properties is Netflix and Hulu, and the broadcast networks don't even come up in the mix. So
Machinima, for example, right, is hugely trafficked, and you could probably compare that to a medium-sized cable network for that audience too, right?
I mean, it's true. So we need to very rapidly figure out what's going on, because where the value is where people are pulling content and engaged in.
So I would agree, but I would say then we kind of already know what's going on, don't we? I mean, we kind of know that viewers, and maybe defined in different pockets, are already doing things and accessing video either through various legal or illegal means, right? And I think many of us inside our little bunkers kind of just say, do you see anything? No. Do you see anything? No. Okay, let's negotiate off at Nielsen and do upfronts again. So I guess my big question would be, what's going to change this and get everybody sort of on the same song sheet? Because it's clear to me, at least from where I sit, the consumer's already ahead of all of this stuff. I mean, Steve just mentioned this case before, where somebody's consuming a TV show that's produced and delivered linearly and on demand and online in their own time and space, right? When is that leakage, if you will, going to just change everybody's perception and say, look, this has to be fused together, and it's a much more holistic conversation? When does that happen?
I think a big piece of that is the transition that's happening from online video being a digital tactic. It was a line item in a digital media plan, to now what's really changing is it's becoming a video strategy. And I think we're starting to see that marketers and agencies are seeing that we do need to look at the online video landscape for the reasons that you said. It's where the younger, we're looking at a younger, multicultural demographic that is going to completely change the way that they're consuming media and the overall landscape. So you're seeing that a video strategy is being created at a higher level. And so, when I was saying that you still need to have these experts in the marketplace who are experts in buying and negotiating and knowing what the best placements and properties are in each medium, you need to have those experts. But what's happening is where the change is going to be where we're able to look at video holistically, and a big piece of that is looking at communications goals and seeing GRPs and TRPs, and there's a lot of great movement happening there. So we're able to look at now a holistic communication strategy and saying we're reaching this many men, 21 to 35, adding up, the stack of media channels that we're looking at. And what's going to drive that is when you look at how much you're spending in online video and what the reach and the efficiencies are there, and when you start to see how much that contributes to your goals, then you're going to be able to see movement in terms of spend in online video.
But I think it is changing.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a couple things going on. You have an ecosystem, a media buying and advertising ecosystem that has existed for 70 years, and you have tenants of that ecosystem that still drive the momentum of how the business is transacted. And I think if you take a snapshot today,
It's efficient in its inefficiency.
and if you someone should tweet that. I think Kathy's doing
And quote
that,
Scott.
yeah.
Kick him
I
out.
think that if you take a step back and look 5 years ago, there were no new fronts. There was traditional broadcast up front, and there were, if you go back 10 years, 15 years, cable upfront presentations sometimes happened, sometimes didn't happen. Today, you have a month and a half of media properties of all shapes and sizes saying, look what I got, because we know you're thinking about media today. But the truth is, media is really bought and consumed 52 weeks a year. And so you have the changing consumer landscape, and you have an ecosystem that's existed for a long time. The market always figures it out, because where the audience goes, the marketers ultimately figure out how to be there. But I think you're seeing it. The other interesting thing I point out is we at NBC looked at and talked to something like 30 clients on the TV side and on the digital side. We did an internal look about 3 or 4 months ago of, how is TV, how is video going to be transacted this year? And what we learned was that agencies are all different, clients are all different, mediums are different. And so from our perspective, the organization sellers that can tell that story and fuse engagement and environment, quality of audience with reach, still are the ultimate winners.
So there's going to be a wheat and chaff separation in terms of people's IQ, at least at this point, maybe, right? Okay. Yeah. You looked like you were ready to pounce on an idea, Steve.
Yeah, pounce maybe, not quite. No, I was just going to say, from our point of view, I think the other thing that we tend to oversimplify here is that all video is not the same. And, so much online video historically has been clip form, and it's a pre-roll and it's a 2-minute clip. And then equating that with a 22-minute show on broadcast television, it's not the same. We're obviously moving into a world where more and more long-form video is living online. And I think as we're trying to figure out, to your question a minute ago of, so when do we start measuring those, I think we're probably going to have to figure out the full broadcast show with the C3 ad load, delivered online, delivered through whatever other platform, and then worry about how we can we apply those same metrics to a 2-minute clip? The answer may not be exactly the same. We may have to dumb down online metrics to TV metrics for those until we can get TV to where it needs to ultimately be, and maybe that comes with a Google TV, Apple TV, that kind of thing.
But arguably,
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, okay, but arguably, isn't that just a perpetuation of what Scott just said about the last 70 years of legacy? Kind of shoehorning it into a Nielsen number that arguably is not accurate anyway.
No, of course it's not accurate.
Somebody should tweet that.
I think that's
it's-
dangerous,
it's-
man. That's dangerous. I mean,
But it's true.
Dumbing down anything in today's age is just the wrong way to do it. I mean, it's just not the way to go. I mean, we got to stop selling media because we own media and start helping marketers buy buyers of their products. And the only way we can do that is not by dumbing it down, and not by saying, gee, I've got 18 to 49-year-olds or 18 to 24-year-olds, and assume that every single one of those is exactly the same and has the same propensity to buy a particular product and the same engagement in a particular media. I would argue that people that view even Grey's Anatomy on ABC versus those that view it on ABC.com are not only different types of people, but also buy different types of products. And I just get it just wigs me out or it freaks me out when we say let's dumb it down and just buy lots of people.
So that's a very good and solid point of view. I can see Steve reacting. Hear your point, and then I'll let Steve jump in, okay? Because it's definitely one camp of thought, and you're absolutely correct in that camp of thought. But you I want to hear your differences.
I definitely think that dumbing down is one of the problems here. Using that word is obviously a scary word, and it means we're going backwards, and we certainly don't want to do that. I think, to my earlier point, which I was trying to reconcile with, which is, do you take an old model and for the short term use it for benefit to get things in the right direction, while also ensuring that you're continuing to look at the new way at properly looking and valuing audiences online and content online, and maybe there are ways in the short term as well to kind of figure out how to translate a deeper targeting or deeper metrics. When you talk about maybe politically involved people or soccer moms, things that are not just straight demographics, and that maybe you can translate those up into the sort of standard demographics that you still have currently, and start making your way towards figuring those things out while you use the current method that's in place that has the scale that gets you in the right direction. I think that's sort of where I've arrived at after lots of soul searching about it.
Yeah, I would agree with Andy. I mean, do I like the idea of dumbing down? No, and maybe that is too drastic of a statement. But when you hear of the notion of applying GRPs to online video, I don't really know how else to describe it. We know that since the dawn of time with the internet advertising, we've always been held to a higher standard because it could be measured.
Right.
And that is not helping bring the dollars from television into online. That's maybe been one of the reasons why it hasn't come in, is because you could see that where it was and wasn't effective. That doesn't mean that's not where we shouldn't strive to get to. I completely agree. In the meantime, I would take issue with something that you just said, Gary, which is I don't think somebody watching Grey's Anatomy on ABC.com is necessarily different from watching it on ABC television. I certainly know in the case of Comedy Central, we have people watching The Daily Show on air, online, on mobile, based on time and place, not necessarily because they're different people. They're just, Tuesday I can catch it on TV. Wednesday I'm busy, I'm going to watch it online. I'm the same person. And so treating me differently because I happen to watch it on my computer one day and watch it on my TV 3 days later doesn't make any sense to me. It's still the same show and I'm still the same person.
No, but that speaks again to the media ecosystem of, CPMs for a type of television are different than a CPM for radio, than a CPM for outdoor, and a CPM for print. I think it's really important to also remember that we can't go too far with technology. Technology definitely is a unique attribute of this medium, but people target by looking at content, and media buyers who are people are looking at, okay, who do I think watches this? And that is part of what I think is always going to exist as long as people are making creative and making media buying decisions. So we have to find a balance.
But there's one point I think that Steve is effectively saying too, is that there's just this a crazy amount of complexity that's sort of part of the quote unquote online video scenario, pre-rolls and click-throughs and page loads and all kinds of other things that just don't even seem even close to the sort of the brand reach and frequency proposition that television in its earliest form has been kind of really good at. I guess I'm going to throw out this one concept, because a number of the programmers, the more forward-leaning television programmers I've heard out there, are actually starting to finally rally around this concept of authentication as a way to possibly solve some of this, maybe most of it. And for those, authentication obviously is an inside buzz term in the TV distribution business, but it's the idea of once you have confirmed that you are a paying subscriber to ESPN, TBS, or whatever package of systems you might subscribe to, you then get access regardless of device. And that, so that may sound like a bit more of a digestible middle ground almost between seller in the traditional CPM and Nielsen rating kind of system and the buyer who doesn't want any more complexity but wants less of it.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is ESPN is the biggest proponent of that. But ESPN3 and ESPN, so that through Watch ESPN, don't serve their regular TV ads. Because
they're separating them for now.
They're separating it for now because, again, we're still at that point where we can't get past the fact that we've got two different metrics for measuring.
But do you see a day, though, and it would seem to be relatively soon, where the negotiation becomes about a video placement, and it's
Yes.
just measured and counted differently, but it's all a big package of
Absolutely,
video
yeah.
buy, to Talia's earlier
Yeah,
definition?
No question. I mean, and if you talk to John Kozner at ESPN, they basically, that's exactly what they're betting on. That day will come. They will be ready when it happens.
But it's only going to solve part of the video landscape, right? So the television and cable networks only represent, less than half of all, much less than half than all of all video viewing activity that happens, and of all video advertising revenue that's being put out there. So it might help for the television side of things, of viewing things holistically in terms of having a multi-screen experience when you're buying Grey's Anatomy, but it's really not going to solve the broader challenge of
No,
online
and
video.
that was sort of my point about, I think we're going to have to accept more than one system, because TV on a different platform is very different from watching YouTube clips, watching short form content in other ways.
So on the premium level, then, maybe the authentication thing maybe has some traction. How about on the other side, though? Is it then, and I think, Gary, you were kind of hinting at this, a more audience-based approach, maybe similar to what Dave Morgan's Simulmedia is attempting to do, and bring sort of that audience-based targeting and buying to a swath of television/video offerings that aren't necessarily bought by show or program or title?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. One thing that I'll answer that, but one thing I want to get to is that the level of engagement that people have with different video, whether it's a clip or whether it's television online or something, needs to be factored in. That's really very important. And you see the rush to social TV mechanisms, and the reason for that is because the TV world has woken up and said, gee, I guess engagement is important. I need to know if people are actually watching, engaging, talking, buying, all that type of stuff. And the value actually that digital brings to the part is that there is engagement. There's inherent engagement because you pull to you the video that you watch, so therefore the chances are of you being more engaged are higher. So I think that in the model, you need to have a combination of the currency, in other words, the size of the audience, but also the level of engagement of the audience for a particular audience. To your point about audience, I think we also have to be a little bit careful about just aggregating audiences for audience sake and not taking into consideration whether the people within that audience are brand buyers for a particular client is really critical to understand. Because you can have an audience, let's say working mothers, for example, and there's probably subsegments within that some of them might be more attached to one brand, maybe Pampers, another set of maybe more attached to Huggies. And if I'm a marketer, I need to understand and delineate that so I can understand where my best opportunity for return on investment will be.
But I also think you have an opportunity to expand your audience, because digital brings a different consumer than television. And so if you can find the right blend of, in our perspective, TV content and digital content, and put video over both, and we've done it as recently as what we're doing today with Club Clear and Unilever, where we're taking their content and we're engaging a consumer, and we're creating video based on consumer response. You're taking advantage of both mediums and bringing a better product to consumers and satisfying the marketer needs.
But, so I'd like people to get ready with questions, and just whoever wants to step up first to please stand up, and we'll get to you. But I want to ask one question as we do that. So I just want to have a jump ball on the tablet experience, the two-screen thing that seems to be the meme of the week, and dozens of companies all trying to sort of scramble for it. Is it real or not, this sort of two-screen interactivity with one's TV viewing? And does this also maybe help bring the silos of digital and TV together?
I think research shows it's real. If you look in my house with my 12 and 14-year-olds, I know
I've never
it's
been to
real.
your house. I wouldn't know.
You're welcome to come by. I think it makes the experience better.
I think it's definitely real. How it scales, I think, is still to be seen. But for sure, I mean, lots of the apps that you see out there, all the networks are trying to encourage that. And then there's the third-party apps, like things like Into Now and Get Glue and things like that, that allow people to talk in real time and communicate with others about what they're watching. Is got to be a great signal for content creators. But it's also, back to the measurement thing, another great set of data to lay over, impressions delivered and things like that, so we can really understand engagement.
Yeah, I would say we want it to be real. We would love it to work. I think.
Why?
Why? Because I think to everything we've been saying, engagement is key, and if you can get people to stay more focused on your show, that's fantastic. What I think the jury is still out on right now is whether those tablets necessarily do that for all kinds of shows. I think there are a subset of shows that it works fantastically well for. There are other shows where having a poll up during the show is not particularly interesting and is not going to engage anybody. And for having somebody with a tablet in their hand, doesn't necessarily mean they're focused on your programming. They could be very likely doing email and talking about something completely different, which is absolutely fine too. The question is for us to figure out the best ways to maximize that two-screen. I think there's no question the idea of watching TV with a device is not going to change. It's not going to go away. What can we give people on that device that's maybe more compelling than we've seen so far?
There's probably a parsing of the audiences as well, younger audiences, older audiences, and other sort of thematics as well. Do we have any questions, please? I see a microphone in the air.
I see a guy with a question.
Please don't hold back.
Hi,
Sir,
my
could you
name
identify who you are, where you're from, and your question?
Which videos I watch. My name is Tom Kadala. I'm from Research Pays. We're a blogger for CEOs. So a lot of this is very new to me, so excuse me if this question, I'm just really asking it from a strategic point of view. I'd like to ask the panelists, because I just feel a lot of frustration here between trying to make a round peg fit into a square hole. And I'd like to just release your imaginations. I feel a lot of talent up here. And I feel all of you have shackles on. So for the next 5 minutes, could you unleash your shackles and just tell me what is the revenue model that you would like to see, or business model? How would you just redesign this thing if you could just tell Nielsen to go away or whatever it is? Just go.
I always say, if to your point, if an alien ever dropped out of the space and looked at the way we're currently buying, selling, transactioning media, they would say that they would think that we were absolutely insane, because it's so vested in inherent inertia of the historic marketplace, and it's not real. If I was designing it, I would have each brand be we're buying a person who wants to buy a product, so I would design it around the marketer, and I would find out from the marketer where the level of engagement is highest in which media properties and where their audiences can be found, and I would purely work on it from the CMO, brand marketing perspective, and sort of walk away from the shackles that media is providing us with, that we all have these things that we own, sell, monetize, and we're doing sort of a disservice to the marketing community by not really taking a step back and thinking about it purely from their perspective.
I'd say, too, that that's definitely an interesting take on it. Even maybe this is too practical for a release the shackles question, but I think the one thing we need, maybe more than anything, is an understanding of unique audiences across the platform. So if we understand where we're reaching a specific person or target audience, regardless of where they're viewing that video, then I'm way farther along in my path towards understanding unique reach and being able to value the different opportunities on the different platforms, and know that I can plan more holistically against video, against audiences, because I know where I can reach them and where I am actually adding unique reach and being willing to pay for that.
Yeah, I would just echo exactly that. I mean, I think if we could do away with this idea that we don't actually know who's watching various shows and we're guessing it based on a panel, and instead actually use the data that we can get from set-top boxes or whatever else, so that you actually can start figuring out where everybody is, what they're watching, when they're watching, and which device they're watching. That opens up so many possibilities for advertisers that we've barely scratched the surface of.
I think the angst that you hear is representative of the game that's played as it's currently, and the rules that the game is defined by, and like how, and having referees kind of say, hey, come on, ref, that was a foul. Where you're coming from a newbie's point of view, so to speak, and this alien analogy, is media effectively has become has always been a historic proxy for reaching audiences. And to Gary's point, those proxies, largely demographically focused and largely defined by a legacy currency called Nielsen and television, has been basically the way the game has been played. And arguably, to your point, marketers are starting to question, agencies starting to question, that if media isn't the only proxy anymore, or maybe shouldn't be, or maybe should be, but more intelligently. So that's kind of more a better framework. So the inside pool stuff is, how do we all get there? And you're hearing silos and all that kind of stuff. That's the exact reason this panel exists. The bigger question is, all these other forces, technological, consumer, and just life in general, it does portend a questionable approach, or it questions the current system as it exists today, maximizing today's game when maybe the game is actually changing itself. That's the way I would best frame it for a CEO crowd. Do we have any other questions? We've got time for maybe one or two more. Please, that was a really good question.
That
I
was
would
a
love
really
another
good
really good
question.
question. Anybody else?
I'm going to retitle this panel "Free at Last."
This person right back there.
Oh, good.
Free at last.
Hi, not to add to the alien confusion.
I'm sorry,
but,
you are an-
I'm sorry. Rob Ross, Adapt TV. Wanted to ask you, this might be totally unrelated, but two network programming chiefs came out this week about now C7 should be a new form of measurement, and obviously the networks are not monetizing anything beyond the C4. So how does that kind of fit now, that kind of discussion, into TV to video ratings and impression space? Because we do know that a fair amount of video is watched after 3 days, and probably more so on that side than on the first 3 days, the commercial plus the 3. So anybody just comment on what your thoughts are to that.
I think
and I know,
that-
Scott, that affects you probably most directly, too,
I think
right?
that speaks to just what Tim brought out earlier, which is the game is changing, and it's our job as media companies to be able to accurately represent where and when the medium's being consumed. And I think that what I have seen in my experience is that the advertisers always find the audience, and sometimes it takes some time to get there, but the market ultimately makes the call on this. And I think you're seeing an evolution in how media is bought and sold, and we're in the middle of it, or maybe even the first inning.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that point. I mean, I think we look at our ratings live, 3 day, 7 day. You have to, we're seeing some of our hit shows now where we're seeing significantly more consumption, several days after the fact than happened live. So, from our point of view, we absolutely want to capture all of that viewing. I mean, and it kind of gets to the sort of factor of, like, if they watch it on day 5 or they watch it on day 3, is it really that different? At the end of the day, if you know who the audience is and they've watched the show, you know who the audience is, they've watched the show. It should count the same way. We certainly think it's all part of that question of who is it, what are they watching, when are they watching it. The more data we can get, the more intelligently we can sell against it.
And that, my friends, will be the final word, because unfortunately we probably could have another few hours of various topics that were brought up today. But I do want to thank my panelists. Excellent conversation. Hopefully you get a little sort of read of the road, and thanks for your attention.
Thanks, guys.